So Cori Bush was on CNN recently, and she actually got asked a really good question. I know I'm surprised too. Most of the time, you'll never see CNN asking an actual good question, proposing things and framing things from a leftist perspective. So it was very interesting to see this. We're gonna watch it together. I'll let it play through, and then I'll run it back and kind of react to it point by point. But it illuminates something that I've been saying for a little bit, and I know a lot of other progressives have been saying it. And I think I talked to Breonna Joy Gray about this, but I said when you see all the progressives and squad members in Congress operating, you hear Ro Khanna talk, you hear Pramila Jayapal talk, you hear AOC talk, you hear Cori Bush talk. They're all kind of saying different stuff, and I'm like, are they talking to each other? Are they working and operating as a cohesive unit, as a block? See, when you're in a hostile place, I kind of liken it back to, you're playing on the road. If you're into sports, or if you're on a sports team, you're playing on the road, and it's pretty much everyone against you, right? You're this small group of people. You have a common goal, a shared end goal. You have to make sure you're communicating and you're all on the same page, because it's going to get loud and things are going to be chaotic. And so you have to make sure that y'all are all on the same page. And the first part of that is communicating, right? And it always felt like the squad members and the House progressives as a whole were not talking to each other. They were not coming up with strategies. They were not being that cohesive unit, right, in a hostile place, which they are in, because 90% of Congress or whatever doesn't agree with their perspective on things, the issues that they're fighting for, the corporate Democrats and the Republicans. They don't agree with them, so they're in a hostile place. So they need to ensure that they're communicating and working together as to give them more power, right? And so that's something, and this interview is going to illuminate why I was correct in saying that they're not talking to each other. They're not operating together. They're not operating as a unit. So let's go ahead and take a look at what Cori Bush had to say on CNN.
Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia has essentially, used what seems to be a veto power against a lot of progressive priorities, including some of the ones that you've mentioned. But in the House, Democrats have this 2-seat majority. There are 6 members of the squad, of which you are a part. What's stopping you from flexing that same power for your agenda? You just said you would vote against a compromise on qualified immunity. Are you prepared, and the rest of the squad prepared, to use that kind of veto power that you have if you vote as a bloc?
I'm prepared to do whatever is needed to make sure that that our agenda moves forward. But I can't speak for the rest of the squad members. At the end of the day, my sister Ayanna Presley says it all the time. You vote alone, and you're voting for your districts. So you're voting for the people who voted you in. You're voting their needs and their values.
Okay, so like I said, 1 minute short clip, really like a 30-second answer there, but very illuminating. So let's run it back, and let's stop it at each point she makes, and we'll react from there.
What's stopping you from?
Great question, by the way. Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, all these corporate Democrats, they're all talking. They're all coming together. They're putting it on the press. We're not going to vote for stuff unless we get the tax cuts for our wealthy donors in our states, like the SALT cap repeal, all this stuff. They're making hard lines, red lines in the sand. They're doing all that, right? So what's stopping y'all? Y'all are called the literal squad. That's what y'all are called, like a team, right? Like a group of people that work together cohesively. What's stopping y'all from doing the same thing that Joe Manchin and the corporate Democrats are doing? Great question. Great question. One we've been asking here at the Takeover. People, all in the progressive, real true left community has been asking this. I mean, since before Forced to Vote, but Forced to Vote really illuminated it back in December.
Same power for your agenda. You just said you would vote against a compromise on qualified immunity. Are you prepared, and the rest of the squad prepared, to use that kind of veto power that you have if you vote as a bloc?
I'm prepared to do what.
It's actually interesting because it seems like she wasn't prepared for this question, right? And because we've been asking this for months and months and months, it feels like they should have a prepared response for this question, right? So immediately off the block, she's not really sure how to answer it. When you get put on the spot and you're a little nervous, you're on national TV, it's live, and you don't really know how to answer that question, then you get the, maybe this, that, she's not really direct and sure on how she's going to answer this question, because it's a good question. It's a valid question. It's not one that she's ready to give, a real answer on, an answer that people want to hear, people like progressives and the left, probably because she hasn't talked to the rest of the squad members about it and doesn't want to go out on a limb and say they're all going to do that.
Whatever is needed to make sure that that our agenda moves forward. But I can't speak for the rest of the squad members. At the end of the day,
see that, and that's the issue, right? That's the main issue right there, is because if you are truly a squad, and if you're actually using your leverage and using your power and understanding how to use, the slim majority in the House to your advantage, then you would be able to answer for the rest of the squad, and you should be able to answer for the rest of the squad, because your power only lies in your ability to function as a core block and have that veto power, as the CNN host was saying, over certain bills. That's how you get, you get brought to the negotiating table, because they need you. When you say you're just going to vote for bills and you're going to be propositional instead of, an oppositional force, and you're just going to propose things and try and frame things in the right way, like Pramila Jayapal said recently, they don't have to listen to you. They don't have, you're not at that negotiating table. So that's a big issue right there. The fact that she can't, and the other squad members can't talk and say what they're going to do as a group, because they haven't talked to each other and they're not functioning in that way.
my sister Ayanna Presley says it all the time. You vote alone, and you're voting for your districts. So you're voting for the people who voted you in. You're voting their needs and their values.
Okay, so I mean, and that just shows everything we really need to know. It's it's just more overt, right? The fact that she's saying you're voting alone. Well, yeah, technically you vote alone, right? You vote for your name, you're one representative in the House, so you're technically voting alone. But the idea is that you vote as a block, so you're not alone. That gives you more power. Why is that so hard to understand? Like, why is that something after 3-4 months of this discussion and debate being had inside the left community? Why is why is this still coming up, this idea that you have to vote alone? That's a huge issue. That's a huge problem. That's a huge signal to show all of us here, all the people that went out and supported and gave money and all this type of stuff to these candidates, and these elected representatives. That shows us that no matter how many of us, how many of, progressive left members we can get into Congress, they're going to be operating alone. They're never going to have the majority. That's not going to happen. There's like 10, 15 real progressives in Congress. That's 10 to 15 of 200 something, right, of Democratic members in the House. You're never going to have the true majority where you can all vote alone and this good, great progressive bill is going to get passed. That's just not going to happen. You're going to have to function as a block. That's where your power lies. They don't even understand where their power lies. They still think they're voting alone. What? This is the politics they're playing in 2021 after a pandemic, in the middle of a crises looming in the future once some of these stimulus measures wear off or end. And this is what we have. We have progressives in Congress that don't even understand politics, don't even understand how to vote as a block. Ayanna Presley's going over there telling, Cori Bush, probably telling Jamal Bowman, Mondaire Jones, this is what the advice she's giving to these new members of Congress. You always vote alone. Like, that's the scariest shit ever. No, you don't always vote alone. You're voting with your other true progressive members of Congress as a block. And you're voting with the weight of the people behind you. You're never voting alone. And so this is not encouraging to me. I mean, I don't know how y'all feel about this, but to me, this is not encouraging because they just don't even understand where their power lies. So, and Cori Bush said it in another interview. She said she's willing to withhold her vote for the ending of qualified immunity. Great. Amazing. You understand that you have that leverage and power in that sense, and that issue is big enough and important enough that you should withhold your vote unless it's reformed or taken away completely, right? Why is that same thing not applied to Medicare for all, or at the least expanding Medicare instead of expanding the ACA, right? $15 minimum wage, any of these big ticket progressive items that you need to be pushing for and getting into some of these bills, right? Because we don't know what's going to happen in 2022. We don't know when the next time you're actually going to get a chance to legislate and govern. We don't know that, so you have to push for it now. Why is that so hard to understand? I just don't get it. And that's why I'm frustrated, because I understand it. And politics is something I came into, right? It's something I research and love and love to get involved with, but it's really not the main thing I do every single day, right? That's not my main job. For you, members of Congress, it's literally your job. It's what you're supposed to be doing. And the fact that you don't even understand how this works, you still think you're voting alone. You don't understand that you can vote as a block and have way more power. This is just a lot of things to take in. It's a lot of things to take in. It's disappointing. It's frustrating. But at least it's getting talked about, right? At least it's getting talked about. So it shows that we're not just screaming into a void, right? CNN hosts are starting to ask. They're talking about it on a lot of these mainstream news shows about how progressives need to flex their muscles more if they want to get anything done. So it's making a difference. So we're going to keep screaming about it. We're going to keep talking about it. And hopefully eventually it's not too late before progressives in Congress get their act together and actually realize they have some real power and some real sway. And it would be really advantageous for them to use that right now, while they actually have an ability to, influence anything, which is not gonna be the case if you lose the House majority in 2022.